Beautiful and strong people, welcome back to Lesson 9, Individual Differences of the Deadlift Mastery. In this lesson, we're going to learn, and pretty much the whole premise of this lesson is to see that there is no perfect way of actually deadlifting. Just like there is no perfect way of actually squatting. And just like there is no perfect way of actually doing the bench press. All techniques are going to be okay and are going to be right as long as they're actually within the context of the individual, as long as they're actually efficient for you. So what we need to find is more so efficiency than perfection. This is why during these presentations, we've actually started more so with the principles and understanding the principles before getting into the individual differences. Because if you're mastering the fundamentals, if you're mastering pretty much the principles of how to properly deadlift, you're going to slowly start to see patterns of where your body is actually feeling more comfortable to generate force. And that's your technique. That's pretty much, where your stance should be. That's pretty much where, you should be generating force of. So this is why, the first place where we should be going for are the principles of actually generating force. And after that, we can look at individual differences and see what we might actually find, what might actually benefit some of us, and what might actually not benefit some of us. So again, this is more of a general discussion. These are just, some general guidelines, starting with the anthropometric considerations. There are a lot of things that are going to dictate the way you should be deadlifting. So I want you to explore. I want you to have a conventional session. I want you to have a sumo session, or just have them both in the same session. Have something like, conventional top set and sumo back downs to see which stance really feels good to you. I've had athletes in which I've actually worked with, and they were very proficient with one particular stance. And we tried the opposite stance, and we found out that the opposite stance is actually better than the regular stance that they actually used. And that was pretty much the tipping point that made their deadlift just absolutely blow up, because we found a more efficient way of actually doing the movement. And that all starts with, having your primary session with your normal stance, having your secondary session a little bit lighter with a, different stance. So this especially happens with conventional pullers moving to sumo pulling. Conventional gets them a little bit too tired. And with sumo, we're using sumo as a means to still practice the movement, but explore some weak links in that particular position. And we've actually started to see that secondary session just kept on increasing and increasing and increasing until to the point in which the strength on your conventional became pretty much close to the same on the sumo, but with less fatigue. So you kind of have it in your face. You realize the fact that, hey, I can pull more load and just not feel as beat up. Well, this is the stance for me. This is the best possible signal that, that's where your stance should be like. So the anthropometric considerations such as arm length, femur length, torso length are going to influence quite greatly the way you should be deadlifting, but also the mobility. Especially the hips, the shoulders, the T-spine is going to dictate your stance and bar path. So you're going to have some comparison between long torso, long arms, short torso, long arms, and short arms. Okay, it seems like these two are actually repeating. But you're going to notice how the position of the hips is actually changing as you're going from long torso, long arms to short torso, short arms. Okay, so you're going to start to see slightly more hinge, slightly less hinge. Having the torso a little bit more leaned forward in comparison to having torso a little bit more upright. Okay, so generally speaking, if you have long arms, you're absolutely blessed. You are blessed for the deadlift. You're going to have easier pulls because you're just going to have a shorter range of motion. For those of us, myself included, in which I'm having really short arms, I have T-Rex arms, benching is good. Not as much deadlifting. So No, it's wins and losses in powerlifting. If you're built quite symmetrical, you have the advantage of actually having a having an easier time just building a really strong total. But for other people, it might actually be a better idea just focusing on getting most of their total coming from one particular lift. So the femur length is also going to influence that. The long femurs are going to have a harder time with the conventional because they have to hinge more. Sumo is going to be often stronger. When it comes to the torso length, long torso means more lean in conventional and a little bit more upright on sumo, especially if you have short legs. And of course, the mobility, the hips, shoulders, and T-spine is going to dictate the stance and the bar path. If your hips are jammed up, you can't really do sumo too much. Okay, if your shoulders and your T-spine, you don't really have that much, let's say, mobility around the shoulders and T-spine, it might actually be a little bit hard to keep your upper back in a neutral position. You might actually fall a little bit more into being more so rounded over, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, again, if you're actually keeping your lumbar secured. Okay, so who's built for sumo and who's built for conventional? Generally speaking, sumo is going to benefit the people that have long femurs, shorter torso, and just generally good hip mobility. For the conventional actually benefits longer arms, balanced femur to torso ratio, and just generally stronger posterior chain. So if you're really strong with your pulls, conventional might actually be the deal for you. Okay, both of them can be trained. Your strongest stance might actually surprise you. So the strength that you're actually building as a sumo puller in the conventional is going to transfer to your sumo, and having your sumo training the sumo while being a conventional puller is going to transfer to some degree to your conventional. A little bit less in that direction, but based on your anthropometrics, that can actually influence in a positive manner. So global tension and back position. As I said, a little bit of rounded thoracic flexion is going to be acceptable in heavy pulls, especially for the people that just naturally have, less mobility around this area. As long as the low back is actually secured and it's remaining neutral, and you're holding the brace, very important, you're connecting with your lats, okay, so you have the lat tension in there, shouldn't be much of a problem. We want to avoid, to the best of our ability, trying to have our lumbar rounded, or even overextending the lumbar. This is still not a good place to actually be, because you're putting a lot of shear force in that area. Ideally, we want to be neutral, and again, neutral is a range. It's not a fixed point. So it's okay if your thoracic spine rolls a little bit forward. It's okay if your lumbar is rolling a little bit, it's rounding just a little bit during heavy pulls. As long as the brace is still there and you're still in a very solid position, it shouldn't be much of a problem. Now, I have a really good analogy for you guys that I hope will strike home and will pretty much show how patience in the setup is going to be paramount to the energy transfer. Because I want you guys to think about towing a car. So let's say that you've stuck your car in the snow, it's winter, and you kind of have to call your neighbor or just a friend, someone to help you to, bring the car out. This analogy is going to work more if you have a friend towing you and not having a tower car to bring your car out. Usually the way you would actually tow a car by using another car would be to just have some rope and put it on the bumper here, and pretty much connected with the back bumper of the other car, especially if you have those special places to actually connect the rope in between them. So the way it would actually work with, you would actually remove the slack from the rope, so the rope doesn't break or a bumper doesn't break. And once it's pulled, the car that should be towed will start to actually move. Okay? Now, if you're not pulling the slack first, there are a couple of things that are going to happen. Either one of the bumpers from the towing car or from the car that's actually being towed will actually break. Okay? Or the rope is going to break. Or if neither of those are going to break, your car will just be hit by the inertia of the car that needs to actually be towed till it starts to actually move. Okay, so it's going to be a harder job for the engine to actually break that inertia. Okay, so the easy way you can actually tow a car is to pull the slack from the rope and after that, go. Okay, the same thing is with the deadlift. We want to pull the slack first and then move. No jerking. Okay, we want a smooth setup for a smooth pull. So in summary, arm, femur, torso length is going to influence your leverage blueprint. Explore. Don't be afraid to explore. Explore as much as possible and find the position in which you're feeling the most comfortable and you feel like you can generate most force. Sumo versus conventional is going to depend on the structure and mobility. Okay, so mobility is going to matter a lot too. Tension first always beats grip and rip. So try to think about the analogy with towing the car. You want to build tension before you're actually moving, so you actually have a smooth energy transfer. The best deadlift is efficient, repeatable, and of course, safe. Catch you on the next one.